It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
If you have a gun, and I also have a gun, then we can talk about the law. If you have a knife, and I also have a knife, then we can talk about morals, ethics. If you come with empty hands, and I also come with empty hands, then we can talk about truth and principles. But if you have a gun, and I only have a knife, then the truth is in your hands. If you have a gun, and I have nothing, then what is in your hands is not just a weapon. It is my life. The concepts of law, morals, and ethics only have meaning when they are based on equality. The bitter truth of this world is that when money speaks, truth falls silent. And when power speaks, even money takes 3 steps back. Those who make the rules are often the first ones to break them. Rules are chains for the weak and weapons for the powerful. In this world, you have to fight for anything good. The masters of the game compete fiercely for resources, while only the weak sit with their hands folded, waiting for their share. If you want to master your mind, follow Masculine today and join the few who embrace pressure, isolation, and power.
Hey, welcome to Gun Owners Radio. My name is Michael Schwartz. I am your only host. Usually I'm a co-host, but Dakota and Alicia are both out today, so it's just me. We're Schwartz maxing today. So welcome. I hope you guys have enjoyed the last couple of weeks. We've shown a bunch of interviews from the NRA. We went to Houston. We went to the annual meeting, and it was awesome. And I hope you guys are really, really enjoying that. Couple things I want to bring up before I talk about a special guest we have and then some of the show that's coming up. First off, gunprom.com. If you're watching this, you have like 1 day to buy gun prom tickets. It's May 9th and we're about to shut it down. It's almost sold out. So immediately go to gunprom.com, buy your tickets. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's at the California Center for the Performing Arts in Escondido. You'll be able to walk away with a gun as a prize. We're going to have a band and dinner and all kinds of fun. It's going to be a really good time. So if you've never been to a gun prom, time to go to a gun prom. If you've been to a gun prom in the past, you know how fun it can be. So go to gunprom.com and buy your tickets today. Again, you have like 1 day. We're about to shut it down. So go buy your tickets. We're also right in the middle of election season. So go check out our voter guide. If you go to sdcgo.org, if you're in San Diego, you'll see our voter guide. If you're in Orange County, go to orangecountygunowners.com. If you're in Inland Empire, inlandempiregunowners.com and check out our voter guides. Get involved too. And one of the most effective things that we do is we pass out these voter guides at gun shop tabletops. So we go to gun shops, we set up a tabletop at these gun shops, and we pass out information about how to get your CCW, how to join San Diego County Gun Owners. But this is a way for us to distribute these voter guides, and we need you to be involved. We can't just hope that the right person gets elected. We have to be the reason they get elected. So there's a lot of folks to focus on. There's a governor's race that's extremely important. There is a Senate race with Christy Bruce Lane, where we have a couple of folks that are not good for your gun rights running against our candidate, who's Christy Bruce Lane. John Franklin, the mayor of Vista, is running for County Board of Supervisors. There's some real races happening here in June, and we need your help to distribute these voter guides. So today we don't have the two ladies with us, but we do have a guest, who's just as lovely. Attorney extraordinaire Gary Gibson. How you doing, man?
You're on full testosterone today.
Yeah, I know, right? So we're going to talk to you about what's good, kind of the landscape of what's going on with gun owners and the legalities and some of the things that are happening when it comes to protective orders, gun restraining orders, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about what I think is the biggest political story in decades, and that is the Southern Poverty Law Center. Have you been keeping up on that at all?
I have.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the assassination attempt last weekend, because there's some interesting angles there. And we're also going to talk to everybody's good buddy, John Dillon, who is actually, there's a correction I have to issue, Gary. So you'll be, I don't know, you'll probably be interested in hearing. I know you've been following the Glock situation.
Right.
Yeah, with AB 1127.
Right.
I give out some bad information. And I was talking to John this week, and I said, you got to come on the show and we got to correct it. So, in fact, is John there? Okay, let's. Awesome. John, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Look at that guy. You always look like $1 million with your gun collection and your knife collection behind you. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Sure. Stay with the theme. Judges love to see it when I appear virtually fit.
It looks like a fake background, like an AI generated. In fact, I think what I'm gonna do. I know it is. I'm gonna come to your office. Yeah,
Where do we go at all times over here?
I'm gonna come to your office one day and take a picture, and I'm gonna use your office as my background. Look, you even have watches. You're like the realest guy I've ever met. Jeez. Hey, so here's the deal. I gave out some bad information. When AB 1127 came out, we were trying to determine, okay, what can shops sell? When can they sell it? When do they have to stop selling it? And I misunderstood what was going on. In fact, some of the shops in town misunderstood what was going on. Some of the other shops actually had to go retain an attorney and weed through this. So, John, you and I had a conversation this week. You looked through it as the attorney and came up with some accurate information. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw the ball to you and tell people what exactly is going on when it comes to not just Glocks, but anything that's considered an easily convertible machine gun, which really is
semi-automatic machine gun convertible pistol.
Which really just means it's got a cruciform bar in the trigger action, right?
Yes.
Which could be Glock. It could be Shadow Systems, which is another.
Oh yeah, there's countless handguns now that are modeled off of the Glock foundation that use similar internals. So it doesn't just affect the Glocks, but Glock is the number one gun we're going to think of when we think of this system of firearms.
Okay, so number one, obviously, it has to be on the roster. That goes without saying. So
Yes.
Everything we talk about from here on out, the guns for sale through a dealer have to be on the roster. But above and beyond that, talk about what did we discover this week, or what did we determine this week, and what can and can't shops do?
Okay, yeah. So with the Glock ban, there was a little bit of confusion because there's multiple dates that are referenced in the text, and these are multiple cutoff periods. The actual ban, which is a ban on any FFL to sell, transfer any gun that falls under this machine gun converter pistol definition, that ban goes into effect July 1st, 2026. And after that date, you cannot sell those guns in California. Now, there's an earlier date reference in the text of January 1st, 2026. And that comes into play for any FFL. If they were able to bring in a gun that falls under this definition of machine gun converter pistol before January 1st, 2026, they're still going to be able to get it out of their inventory and sell it in California after July 1st, 2026. But that's only if they've had that gun in their inventory physically before January 1st, 2026. Now, people got confused about this period between January 1st and July 1st and what we could do in that period, whether or not you could still bring in guns to the FFLs and patent FFL sell and all that. You can still do that. So there's no actual ban right now that would prevent an FFL from bringing in any Glock or similar gun and selling it, legally in California to California residents. The only caveat that I'll add to that is because July 1st is the cutoff date, and California is the wonderful state that it is, where we have the 10-day wait, everything else that you have to go through to actually purchase a gun. I would say that if you're an FFL and we're going to be selling any of these guns right now, you want to make sure it is very clear that any buyer picks up that gun, not only goes through the 10-day wait, but picks up the gun by June 30, 2046. If you do that, you're totally fine.
Okay, so just to be clear and recap, right now, if you're a dealer and you're in California, you can order from your distributor any gun that's on the roster. That includes Glock, Shadow System, anything that they're going to consider easily convertible to a machine gun that has a cruciform bar in the trigger mechanism. You can order it. You can sell it to law enforcement. You can sell it to civilians. You can sell it just like you did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It doesn't matter, but you have to have it sold and processed and in the buyer's hands before July 1st. Did I recap that accurately?
Yeah, and if you were to, let's say they still had an inventory that they brought in after the January 1st, then really the only way to get rid of that inventory is you're going to have to sell it to law enforcement, or you have to sell it out of state. So that's just the big thing. If you want to sell in California, you got to do it before July 1st. Make sure the 10-day wait's done. Make sure they pick it up by June 30th.
So right now, if you're a Californian and you want a Glock or a Shadow Systems or any pistol that has this cruciform, part, you need to go out and buy one right now. You need to go to a local dealer. That's the part. That's the cruciform part. It's called a cruciform because it looks like a cross. That piece, that part right there, if a gun has it, you can go out and purchase that right now. It's the beginning of May, 2026. You can buy it through June, but you have to have everything processed and done, and you have to pick up that gun before July 1st. That was something I got wrong earlier this year. I want to make sure that everybody understands. Dealers, you can get this from your distributor and sell. Buyers, you can go down to your gun shop and buy. You can purchase it. And you don't have to believe me, but John's an attorney, which means he knows everything. So believe John Dillon. He knows what he's talking about. He looked at this real closely, and he determined that that's the case right now. Anything else people have to know, John?
Oh, I just have to highlight this. So we're talking about this ban and so-called machine gun convertible pistols, and the claim by the state is these things are just so utterly dangerous. They get converted into machine guns and we're all going to die. But notice how this law is, well, these are really highly dangerous guns that need to be banned. We can't sell them anymore. But if you already have it, totally cool. Keep on using it. It just, when you think about the logic of it, you see that this is not about preventing a so-called dangerous, scary weapon that becomes a threat to the public. It is just another way to constrict and prevent firearm sales in the telecom.
Right. Or if you're a cop. The only thing these can be used for is, mass shootings and murder and chaos and horrible things. Unless you're a cop, then it's good to defend yourself.
Unless you're a cop, it's totally fine. And unless you're one of the millions of Glock owners already in California that already have millions of these Glocks, those are fine too. It's just the new ones that are sold after July 1st. Those are the mass shooting ones.
Yeah.
John, have you found, is it like the Freedom Week high capacity magazine gold rush? Have you found that people are getting as much Glock into the state as possible in a week before?
That's one thing about the law. So after July 1st, they still allow for private party sales. So I have no doubt that there are people that have probably bought more Glocks than they really need, and in the hope that they're going to get $500 gun for $1,500.
Glock sponsored by Bitcoin. So they're going to turn Glocks into cryptocurrency.
Well, the other thing is it got confusing because at the same time, coincidentally, Glock released a V and then a Gen 6, which had nothing to do with trying to make them California compliant. But somehow that rumor got out, and the timing, I understand how the rumor got out. I understand why people thought that. But a Glock V and a Gen 6 have nothing to do with trying to prevent it from taking a Glock switch or anything like that. It had nothing to do with that. They were just looking to upgrade, and some of the Glocks fell off the roster and then came back on the roster. It's a little bit of a mess. I think most people are just confused or don't know what's going on when it comes to Glocks. It's so inconceivable that they're going to ban the sale of Glocks that it's just not sinking in. So that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on and talk about it. Appreciate any insight, any lawsuits. I know there was a lawsuit filed. It was FPC and Second Amendment Foundation and I think some others, but any insight on how that's going or what you think about that?
So that case, and I'm blanking on the exact name of the case, but yeah, FPC and staff brought a complaint to challenge that Glock ban. However, that was stayed and then voluntarily dismissed because they're waiting on other court case decisions to come out before jumping into the fray on this Glock ban. Because frankly, we have so many cases lined up that are waiting on decisions in California. You essentially be wasting any, donations for like litigation because you're going to be litigating and do all the briefing. A decision is going to come out. You're going to have to redo the briefing based off that new decision and then re-argue everything all over again. So I think that was the kind of the, explanation and reasoning behind it. It's not that they're not challenging it or everyone's not chomping at the bit to go after it. It's the strategic decision to really focus on the cases that they have out there right now. And then once this backlog of cases clears from the courts and we actually get decisions of an Ninth Circuit, then they're going to push it once we have like definitive rulings.
Yeah, essentially they came out and said, look, we already have our Rena case, which is going to hopefully get rid of, if not all of the roster, most of the roster. We already have this roster case, so why have this other case that, like you said, would just be duplicative and expensive? Okay, John, thank you so much. We're going to get this out so that everybody hears it. Please, if you have any questions, let us know. But get this information out to everybody you know. And if you now's the time to buy. Go see your local FFL. Buy a Glock. Buy a Shadow Systems. Buy whatever before June 30th. Buy whatever you need, whatever you can that has this stupid law against the cruciform part. And John, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, man.
Always a pleasure.
How do people get a hold of you?
You can Instagram, Dillon Law Group, California Firearms Lawyer, Dillon Law Group, gp.com. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, man.
All right. See you guys.
When your rights are on the line and the fight gets real, you need a lawyer who knows the deal. From gun laws to courtrooms, he'll stand by you. John Dillon fights for the red, white, and blue. John Dillon defending your rights, keeping bare arms with truth and might. From GVROs to self-defense calls, Dillon Law Group, he fights for us all. When freedom's under fire, who you gonna call? Dillon Law Group, justice for all. DillonLawGP.com.
Hey, before we get started, I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsor, Self-Defense Fund. If you carry a firearm or take self-defense seriously, you need to think beyond the moment you defend yourself because the legal fight can start immediately after. That's where Self-Defense Fund comes in. They provide legal defense protection for responsible Americans. Right now, our viewers can save 25% off a membership. All you have to do is go to selfdefensefund.com/GOR and you'll save 25% off their membership. So protect yourself before you ever even need it. Join today. Again, selfdefensefund.com/GOR gets you 25% off their already affordable membership rate. Okay, so we're going to interview one of my favorite guests. He's attorney extraordinaire, Gary Gibson, in the San Diego area. I got to tell you, if you need self-defense protection from an attorney, Gary, you're the guy. I am so thankful that we found you. I'm so thankful that you are focused on Second Amendment, that you are knowledgeable on guns and Second Amendment, and I thank you for everything that you've done. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks
Good.
for the intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever imagine years ago, let's say 5 years ago, that San Diego would be such a hotbed and such an interesting place when it comes to firearms, self-defense, CCW, defensive gun use, all the things that you and I talk about?
No, because San Diego's a sleepy little backwater for most part legally.
Yeah.
Not much comes out of here. You know, the big dog, Los Angeles, or even San Francisco, just because of their nature, drive a lot of the legal fights in California. But we've got a strong Second Amendment community here, and they're pushing national litigation. You know, whether you're talking Miller versus Bonta or anything else, they're coming out of San Diego. I mean, San Diego county gun owners, been on the side of a lot of national litigation and state litigation that's going on. And on the ground, we're actually affecting change that's affecting statewide interpretation of legislative statutes that are passed.
There really is a lot going on the ground, and and you've been a big part of a lot of it, and it's hard to articulate and explain every single conversation or every little mini victory that we win, whether it's, you know, legally or with law enforcement or whatever. But it's interesting when they started issuing CCWs. You know, we got the sheriff to start issuing CCWs years before Bruin, and the prediction was always, oh, well, there's going to be this blood in the streets and all these legal battles, and they're going to be in court and whatever. The interesting thing is none of that's happened, but there have been a number of court cases, not because there have been a ton of defensive gun use or a ton of misuse by CCW. There have been a number of fights that gun owners have to have against the law, against regulations. You know, they've tried to over-regulate this thing. So really the quote-unquote blood in the streets are legal, normal, law-abiding gun owners trying to exercise their rights, but the state has been getting in their way, right?
Absolutely. The most defensive gun use or the defensive use of firearms or gun use in California is against the state. I mean, we're fighting the state more than we're fighting each other. It's the state that's getting in the way of regular citizens who just want to own guns and be left alone. And they're doing everything they can to make that complicated, criminalized, or just so intrusive that people give up. And, you know, as I've said many times before, the pain is the point. When you read legislation, if you understand the goal is to stop you from purchasing or carrying or owning a firearm, if you understand that, then you understand what they're doing. The pain is the point.
I like that. The pain is the point, and that's absolutely true. The one thing that I don't know if I really saw this coming. I watched it develop, but I don't think it was something that was predicted. The way the state, government in general. I say the state. That doesn't necessarily mean just the state of California. It can also mean local government, local municipalities. But the way government is using protective orders against gun owners, I don't think anybody predicted that. Again, saw it developing. Like when it got implemented, it was like, wait. This is how that's going to be used. But I don't think anybody, 20 years ago thought, hey, you know what the anti-gunners are going to do? They're going to implement these, protective orders, gun violence restraining orders, red flag laws, and that's what they're going to use against gun owners. It was kind of a Trojan horse, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, what we're talking about is gun violence restraining orders. I think that came into effect in California 17 or 18, around then.
Yep.
So these are gun violence restraining orders, also known as red flag laws. They're called GVROs in California. So if you hear somebody talking about a GVRO, they mean a red flag law gun violence restraining order. And their overuse sort of was driven, back to your point about San Diego kind of driving the conversation. Well, this was a negative drive of the conversation. San Diego became the point person for the use of GVROs in the state of California. Here's the numbers. We're about 10% of the state of California regarding population. There's 36, 37 million. We have 3.5 million, 3.6 million. But we were issuing in San Diego County 33% of the GVROs that were issued in the state of California. 33%, 3 times our demographic impact on the state with regard to GVROs. Why? Because Mara Elliott, the former city attorney of the city of San Diego, saw that this is a horse she could ride to both victory and moral certainty. And she climbed aboard that horse and she drove it. And what she drove was local police departments using GVROs against citizens that they arrest. And if you want to know how that works, if you get arrested for a felony, it's almost certainly true and you own guns, the police department who arrests you will likely issue you at the same time they arrest you with a gun violence restraining order, even though your case has nothing to do with guns, just the fact that you own guns. San Diego Police Department has really been the point people because they're tied to the San Diego City Attorney's Office for many of their cases.
That's such a huge point to make. So the city attorney is supposed to be the attorney for the city council. That's their main job.
It's one of their jobs. Right.
They also have certain prosecutorial, is that the right term?
Inside the city of San Diego, the San Diego City Attorney Office prosecutes all misdemeanors inside the city of San Diego. DA prosecutes the felonies.
So she is as anti-gun as the day is long. Like, I don't mean that someone approached her and convinced her. Like, before she even ran for office, she was involved in the Brady organization, and she's been a keynote speaker, and like she's a true believer when it comes to being anti-gun. She got elected into this job that most people don't even know what it is, the city attorney in San Diego, and she's the one that turned these gun violence restraining orders into such a predatory thing. So she's the one that pushed, first decided to, and then pushed to make them standard operating procedure. They were supposed to be kind of a last ditch effort, like, hey, if nothing else has worked, this could help us prevent crime. And that's how it was sold to voters. But because of her efforts, because some local official in San Diego got elected, and they've turned this thing into a monster that it was never intended to be, at least in theory. So what is the effect? Now that people are misusing it, it's been used as standard operating procedure like you're describing. So in other words, even if the case has nothing to do with guns, they still, if it's a gun owner, they issue these gun violence restraining orders.
They have. It's been my experience in many, many, many arrests that have nothing to do with firearms. As soon as they find out you have a firearm, whether through CFARs or self-admission, as soon as that happens, you're going to get issued a gun violence restraining order. And just understand, that's not part of your criminal case. It has nothing to do with your criminal case. The criminal case may be the basis for the gun violence restraining order, but you have 2 parallel tracks now. You're going to civil court, and you're not entitled to an attorney. You can have an attorney, but you've got to pay for it. You're not entitled to an appointed attorney because there's no deprivation of liberty that can happen. Just the stripping of your constitutional rights, which is not considered the same as losing your freedom.
So what's an example? You get into an altercation with your neighbor, or what, like a DUI? Like, what's an example of a misdemeanor that someone might commit that has nothing to do with guns?
You have a fight with your neighbor.
Have a fight with your neighbor.
A fist fight. There's a battery,
right.
A misdemeanor, nobody's injured.
Yeah.
You threw punches, you missed.
Yep.
And the neighbor calls the cops, and they've got it on ring that you came out and you thought your neighbor was going to hit you, so you tried to swing first. You missed him. The neighbor said, "I'm calling the cops," and that's the extent of it.
Yep.
Well,
now, but before you go any further, there's no reason to believe that you're now going to commit a mass murder. That you're going to go into a movie theater and, shoot a bunch of people up or anything like that. Guns were never brought into it. He didn't threaten anybody with a gun. There's no reason to believe he's at an escalated risk of doing some kind of, horrific murder with a gun. Nothing like that. It's just a simple fist fight, a disagreement between neighbors. And next step is?
The next step is the cops run you, and on your CFARs, or you've had a DROS, where you have a 2-inch 38 that your dad had 80 years ago, and you got through interfamilial transfer, and that's the extent of your firearms collection. And you don't even have any ammo for it. You just got the gun and a lockbox in your house. As soon as they find that out, they will issue you with the GVRO. You now have 24 hours to get rid of that gun. Either give it to them, they'll store it for you, and we'll talk about the problems with that in a minute, or you take it to an FFL, who will store it for you for a fee. So your fee may be, $15 a day. That means your 1 month of storage is going to cost you $450. So you're going to have to get rid of it. And within 48 hours, you have to tell the courts you got rid of it. You have to file a document under penalty of perjury that I got rid of this gun and here's how I got rid of it. And if you don't file that, you are committing a crime.
And if, let's say you only have one gun, or let's say you have 10 guns or 20 guns, whatever. So what? Just to play devil's advocate, Gary, like how does that affect, all right, so they take your guns, don't you just get it right back, or what's the big deal?
Well, you don't get them right back, but what you do get with the gun violence restraining order, because here's how they got that temporary restraining order, gun violence restraining order against you. The cop signed an affidavit of what your neighbor said. Even if you dispute it, they'll include what your neighbor said, and they'll take it to a judge. And the judge will say, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to sign this. And as soon as that's signed, you have no participation in that and no right to intervene. As soon as that's signed, you get served with the gun violence restraining order, and you're off to the races. You've got 3 weeks before your hearing. So you're entitled to a hearing in 3 weeks, and that's why it's constitutional. Because they even mentioned it in Bruin. It's a temporary deprivation of your right to firearms. And the Supreme Court said, given the circumstances, everybody just needs to figure this out. So as long as this hearing is happening within 3 weeks, then gun violence restraining orders are just fine.
And you now have that on your record, that there was a protective order issued against you, even though it was just a gun violence restraining order. And it's going to cost you thousands. You have to hire, essentially have to hire an attorney.
You don't have to, but you'll be at a severe disadvantage because the other side knows how these laws work and you don't. And you don't know what the standard of proof is, and you don't know evidentiary rules. And so all of those things are going to be used against you in this hearing. You really do need a lawyer if you really care about your Second Amendment rights.
And that's thousands of dollars.
Yeah, realistically, probably a minimum of $3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah,
and that's the low end.
Yeah, I was gonna say 5 to 10, but 3 to 5 is probably you can probably find somebody that could at least process it for that amount.
Well,
whether or not that's
you've heard me say this line before. If you're going to hire a lawyer to do a gun violence restraining order, it's like hiring a doctor to cure something. You really need to know the difference between a proctologist and a podiatrist. Depending upon what your affliction is. And so if you're going to hire somebody to do one of these, check and see if they've been there before. And how many they do, and how are they doing in those things, and do they go in with a strategy? How do they deal with it? Are they trying to negotiate it away? But remember, in 3 weeks, you could show up in 3 weeks and they just dismiss it.
Dismiss the
TRO. It just goes away.
And what's the danger there? In different situations, if they just dismiss it, is it done and you're it? That's it? No,
you're done.
Deal?
It's over. The firearms restriction is lifted. Now you get to go get your firearms back, and we'll come to that problem very shortly. But the problem is that you have a TRO on your record, and now there's CCW implications for that.
Now, if you have a CCW and you get into some kind of misdemeanor and they issue this GVRO, this gun violence restraining order, even though guns weren't involved, and you get this temporary protective order, and go to court, what happens to your CCW?
Well, your CCW is likely already gone. As soon as the sheriff finds out you've got a TRO against you, they're coming to snatch your CCW. They're either going to ask you to come down and turn it in, or a detective will show up at your door to take it from you. One of those two things will happen. So you won't have a CCW. It doesn't matter much anyway, because you're not allowed to touch firearms. So whether you have a CCW during the course of the TRO or not doesn't matter. You're a prohibited person.
And it's not like the sheriff has a choice. They legally are obligated to do that. It's not like a sheriff can say, we're just not going to do it in this situation.
That is the sheriff's position, that because of Senate Bill 2, which came into effect on January 1st of 2024, There is a section in Senate Bill 2 that says if you've ever had a TRO against you, not just a GV TRO, not just gun violence, there's plenty of TROs not involving gun violence. There's elder abuse TROs. There's civil harassment TROs. There's domestic violence TROs. If you had any TRO against you, even though it never became a full restraining order after the hearing that you're supposed to get in 3 weeks, you can't get a CCW for 5 years. That's written into Senate Bill 2. And the sheriff's position is, look, we have to follow the law. You know, this may be unconstitutional, and it is unconstitutional. And I've had a judge say that it's unconstitutional in a 14-page opinion, but it only applied to my client at the time. But the sheriff's on notice that this section is likely unconstitutional. I'm interested to see if they keep doing that.
So, okay, but I just want to emphasize for people that are listening all over the state of California, no matter how much you like your sheriff, no matter how pro-Second Amendment your sheriff is, they don't have a choice. There isn't a sheriff in any of the 58 counties that's going to break the law. They're not going to say, hey, I don't agree with this, so I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen. They process this thing regardless because it's state law. That being said, they're caught in this between a rock and a hard place because you've actually had a judge say, yes, this is unconstitutional.
Exact case. One of my clients was arrested for a felony. The felony was dismissed after his arrest, but he was issued with a GVRO at the exact same time, and he had a CCW. Well, we managed to get the city attorney of Carlsbad to dismiss the TRO at the hearing, and so he walked away free and clear. And then he went to get his CCW back, and the sheriff said, sorry, SB2 says that you can't get a CCW for 5 years because you've had a TRO against you. I know you're not a prohibited person. We're sorry. It's what the law says. We took them to court. We had a Superior Court judge, which is the lowest level judge in California. Superior Court judge wrote a 14-page opinion.
Which is very unusual.
Very unusual, saying that this law was unconstitutional because you don't have a right to participate in a TRO. So you have no due process. You can't complain about it until you get to the hearing. So you can't strip somebody of their rights based on a process that they had no right to participate in. And a judge found that to be true 14 pages later.
That's so interesting. 'Cause at that level, they don't usually write up a decision, certainly not 14 pages, right? It's not like we're used to from the Supreme Court.
It's not an appellate court, and it's not the Supreme Court. It's a district court. It's a Superior Court judge writing a written opinion. You don't get many.
And that's how big this thing is.
Well, sort of. Here's why. Because the sheriff and the city attorney and the district attorney did not appeal that ruling. So there was no appellate oversight of that ruling. So while the ruling is in effect, it only applies to one person.
Right.
My client.
So, and that's another important point, is this isn't like some of the other cases that people are used to where when we win, it strikes down everything across the state.
Correct.
And it applies to everybody. That wasn't this.
It is not.
This just applied to your client.
Yeah, but here's the twist. The sheriff's on notice that they went through this process and a judge found it to be unconstitutional, even though it's not stare decisis. It's not, case law that is binding upon them. I'm interested to see what they'll do in the future. I want to know if they're going to go down this road again, or if they're just going to slow walk it and see what happens with the RO. What I mean is they're going to not do anything during the 3 weeks. They are going to issue the CCW. If they do this again and I pick up another one of these cases, and I'm hoping it's me, I think I'm going to go after them for attorney's fees because they know they're doing something wrong. They know they're doing something that has been found to be unconstitutional. I think I've given them a hook to ignore the law.
And this is
at least the San Diego sheriff.
San Diego. But this is also in Riverside as well, right? Isn't there?
No, I don't know of one in Riverside.
I thought. Oh, you know what I'm thinking? It might have been Colin. I think Colin had one in Riverside, but yeah. So that's another one of these conversations that we've been having. That we have. Behind the scenes that you and I have been talking to the sheriff and basically saying, hey, what are we going to do? What are we going to do in this situation here?
I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I hope they do the right thing. because it is clearly, patently, on its face, unconstitutional. If an appellate court gets in on that somebody was stripped of a property right, you have a property right in your CCW. You were stripped in a property right through a proceeding which you had no right to participate in.
Interesting.
I mean, that's the ultimate star chamber.
Interesting.
And so we'll win that if it ever comes to appeal. That's why they'll never repeal it. But I just hope they do the right thing. I mean, they're just hoping in their integrity.
Okay. So how else does this affect people? So that's how it affects CCWs. What else is going on?
Well, we didn't get to the part about getting your guns back.
Okay, go for it.
So you won your TRO. You won your criminal case. Now you get to go get your guns back. If you did the right way to do it and take it to an FFL, you just go to the FFL and they give you your guns back. They'll DROS you again because they have to be sure they're not giving it to a prohibited person, but you will get your guns back because you're not a prohibited person. But if you gave it to the cops and they stored it in their property room, almost every police department in the county requires you to get an LRO, a law enforcement release, LER. Where do you get that? Well, you have to have your gun registered in CFARS, California Firearm Registration System. So if your gun has to be in CFARS, then you go into your CFARS account, and one of the hyperlinks on the left-hand side of the screen says LER, Law Enforcement Release. Then you have to hit that, and about 4 to 6 weeks later, you'll get a letter from the DOJ saying you got 30 days to get your gun. So you're not getting your gun or any of your firearms. Even though you go buy one, you'll buy a firearm before you get your guns back from the cops because it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get that letter.
If pistol, rifle, shotgun, if it's not registered in CFARS, you're not getting it back.
Correct.
In fact, that could possibly be another charge, right?
Correct. Because you have an unregistered gun.
Nope. And that's no matter what. Pistol, rifle, shotgun, no matter how long you've had it, no matter how you obtained it, in California, it has to be registered.
Correct.
Through CFARS.
Correct.
That's interesting. Well, they're not making it easy, Gary, are they?
The pain is the point, Michael.
The pain is the point. What else do gun owners need to be aware of? What else are you seeing?
Well, that's the TRO. The other one that I've handled was, and I've had a few of these. As I said, one of my friends called me. I'm the accidental discharge, self-inflicted wound whisperer.
Yeah,
I've had 5 self-inflicted cases in the last 2 years. Your sheriff looks at that when you have a CCW and says, okay, you shot yourself. It didn't result in criminal charges because it's really hard, unless you're doing something crazy with your gun, to be prosecuted for shooting yourself accidentally. 246.3 of the Penal Code is negligent discharge of a firearm, but it requires gross negligence, not just simple negligence. That's the standard for shooting yourself, is gross negligence. So most accidental shootings don't result in criminal charges. You may be charged, but you're not going to be convicted. And the DA and the city attorneys probably won't charge the case because they have a high recklessness standard, gross negligence standard to meet. So you don't have criminal charges, but the sheriff looks at that and says, hey, you know what SB 2 said? Back to SB 2 again. And again, if you want to go online and look at my San Diego County gun owners presentation on YouTube called The Unblossomed Turds of SB 2.
Yeah,
this
really.
is one of the turds that blossomed out of SB 2.
It was more than just what people know of SB 2. There
It wasn't
so
just
many
prohibited
other
places, and it was intensive CCW regulation. And this is one of the CCW regulations was, hey, if you've been reckless with a firearm, and that's the key word, reckless, we can deny you your CCW, which again seems to me a violation of Bruin because it's leaving the sheriff with unfettered discretion to decide what the word reckless means or what conduct equates to reckless. It's not a firm term. That's a loosey-goosey term. I think you were reckless. No, I don't think you were reckless. So my client was denied because he shot himself accidentally, and he was denied for being reckless, shot himself in the hand. Sheriff said no CCW. We took them to court. Got another Superior Court judge who, because this was a first impression in the state also, there was no appellate rulings on it. She wrote a 5-page opinion on the fight between simple negligence and recklessness, which is the standard the sheriff had to have in order to deny you CCW. Well, recklessness is a really high standard. Just shooting yourself by itself is not reckless. That's negligent, but not reckless. And so the judge said, sorry, on these facts, I can't get to reckless. He's not on his porch at midnight and during New Year shooting an AR into this. That's reckless. And so he got his CCW back, but we fought that one out with the sheriff too, which hopefully instructed them what they have to do in those situations.
But the other complication was the ones that happened within the city limits of San Diego. What happened with them?
Yeah. To add insult to injury, city of San Diego will never disappoint. If you shoot yourself within the city of San Diego, you will be prosecuted. What will you be prosecuted for? A municipal code violation for discharging a firearm within the city limits. Now, I've never managed to get one of these to trial. I've had a couple of them. Both of my clients agreed to settle their cases for infractions, basically speeding tickets. City attorney reduced the misdemeanor charge to a speeding ticket. They paid $250 and they walked away. They just wanted it over. But if somebody's willing to pony up and willing to absorb the risk, I'd like to take one of those to trial, because you have to knowingly discharge the firearm. If you're accidentally shooting yourself, unless it's a suicide attempt, you didn't knowingly discharge or willfully discharge that firearm into your hand.
Interesting.
And so I'm interested to take one of those to trial and beat them. I think they dismiss on trial day, but we never get there because nobody wants to spend $5-10 grand getting to that point and taking the chance that they would get convicted.
So why is the city attorney's office, why are they generating these speeding tickets?
Because they have an institutional bias against anything to do with firearms. And it comes from Mara Elliott, like you said before, and it is woven through her acolyte, Heather Ferbert, who's the new city attorney. She was, a disciple of the Mara Elliott approach to Second Amendment rights, and nothing's changed. And it just infuses their entire organization of this absolute, what appears to be rabid hatred of firearms owners and gun owners.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Anything else? Anything else we need to touch on?
Nope.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. People want to get a hold of you. How do they get a hold of you, Gary?
You can dial me, call my cell phone, 619-889-9748. You can go online on YouTube, type in Gary Gibson, CCW. You'll get some good lectures that are on there that I've done for San Diego County gun owners. And that's about it, 619-889-9748.
Hey guys, Michael Schwartz from Gun Owners Radio reporting to you from the NRA National Meeting here in Houston, 2026. Gun Owners Radio, notorious for asking the hard questions. So we're going to go around and we really want to address what everyone here is talking about here at Houston 2026 NRA. So here we go. Okay, what's your name?
My name is Roger.
And you're here at NRA.
Yep, we've got a display for the Winchester Collectors Association.
All right, fantastic. So I want to talk to you about what everyone's talking about here at NRA this weekend. I want to get your feedback on something that, again, is all the buzz. What are your thoughts on the Madonna and Sabrina Carpenter duet?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, all right, fair enough. All right, have a good show.
So when you're using it on your firearms, because it takes about 3 cleanings, so I like to say it's a clean shoot, clean shoot, clean shoot process, much like seasoning a cast iron skillet. So you're going to field strip your firearm, break it down, and then you're going to put our product on piece by piece by piece, covering the entire firearm. Then you're going to take the barrel, you're going to clean the barrel inside of that, and then you come back and you wipe it all off, and you're done. It's that easy. Remember, seal one and done.
Okay, we're with Jonathan Goldstein. You are a board member for NRA.
Correct.
A very recent board member. You just got on 2 years ago?
About a year ago.
About a year ago.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thanks so much. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you.
Okay, so you're an NRA Board of Directors member.
Correct.
And what do you do on the Board of Directors?
So I'm the chair of our Finance Committee.
Okay.
I'm also on Legal Affairs, and I was elected also to the Audit Committee. And I'm also a trustee of the Civil Rights Defense Fund. So I've got pretty good visibility into our finances and into some of the litigation we've been involved in.
Well, those are big committees too.
Yeah.
Especially with everything that's been happening with NRA, which I'm assuming from what I know about you is one of the big reasons you decided to run for the board of NRA.
Yeah. So, I had been involved with NRA raising money back, let's call it under a previous administration.
Yeah.
And they were happy for me to raise money, but when I started to get a little closer to some of the governance issues, some of the legal issues, I was sort of backed away from that stuff. And as a result, sort of drifted off a little bit. Thought maybe there's not a place for a guy like me here. And then when I saw that Bill Bockenberg was heading up a reform slate, Bill and I both live in Pennsylvania, pretty near each other. And I wrote to him and said, hey, if you're looking for help to get this thing, turned around, I'd like to get back involved. And Bill reached out immediately and put me on as part of that 2.0 slate, and we were all elected. And we've just set about trying to fix the place, just get it tidied up.
What's your professional background?
So I'm a lawyer. I also buy and turn around small American manufacturing companies.
Interesting.
So I have a small group of manufacturing companies and trying to provide good paying jobs for loyal Americans who want to earn a living here in the U.S.
Okay, I was fairly vocal about NRA and some of the things that were going on when they were having problems. I've also been very vocal in the last year and a half, really since I started talking to, I was already talking to Amanda Suffolk, but she introduced me right to the top, Doug Hamlin, talking to him, talking to more board members, and I'm very, very impressed with what has happened with NRA over the past year and a half. I'm very impressed with the vision of the future and folks like you who decided, hey, you know what, enough's enough. I want to get involved. I want to right the ship. Very impressed. It's phenomenal. But one of the most impressive things I've heard this weekend at the NRA convention is that this is the first year in a few years that you guys, NRA, is financially in the black, and I believe it was $11 million positive.
Yeah, between $11 and $12 million of operating profit. Look, let's be candid. We broke trust with our members. We were not good stewards of their resources at the very end, and I'm not speaking out of school here. The courts in New York told us that. I mean, when you get to the point where a court in New York has to get involved in our affairs, something's gone very much off the rails. But we cleaned it up. We right-sized our expenses. We right-sized, the staff and some of the other things that we had going on.
So tell us, okay, so you're with the Finance and Audit Committee, right? Mm-hmm. So what specifically are some things that you guys decided in order to get to that $11 million positive, but also to ensure that what happened won't happen again?
So on the governance side, there's some stuff we did. The Audit Committee is now a committee of the board. It has the full powers of the board, and it's a really muscular place where we're watching carefully what the organization is doing. We have a chief compliance officer who's really all over the kind of self-dealing and other kinds of transactional anomalies that got us into trouble before. We've put really good controls in place internally, just in terms of the way we spend money. We approve the spending of money. We've cleaned up reporting lines internally. People now know who they report to and what they have to do. And look, one of the maxims we have in my business is we invite everybody to change with us. But if you can't change the people, you have to change the people.
Interesting.
And so we changed around, some of the folks that were doing things. And
what kind of push? Okay, so everything you said sounds phenomenal, right? I mean, anybody that heard what you just said, whether they're Second Amendment or a fan of the NRA, or they're just in business in general, everybody would say, yeah, that all makes sense. That's exactly what we should do. So who would push back on that and why?
So the pushback would come only from people who don't want to see that sort of cleanup. Almost everybody was on board. To the extent we had to get rid of anybody who wasn't on board, it was a very, very isolated sort of situation. We really had a leadership problem at the top. What the court said about our former EVP and some of the folks that were around him, that's where a lot of the trouble sort of sat. And once those folks departed, a lot of the other people in the building were really looking forward to working with a board that was putting in place these kinds of new controls and policies. We did have to exit some folks to bring the size of the NRA workforce sort of into accord with the programmatic priorities that we had set as a board, right? That's part of our job as a board, is to set policy. And, we took a look at the things we were involved in, and some of those things were no longer really priorities for our members. And so we had to say goodbye to some programs. We had to say temporarily, hey, some of these programs aren't going to be a big priority for us. And as soon as those things came into focus, we knew where we needed our people, and we knew where we needed to spend our money.
What's an example of a program that you got rid of? Actually, two examples. Example number one, what's an example of a program that you got rid of that you didn't want to? And what's an example of a program that you got rid of that it was a really good thing that was gotten rid of?
So there's no programs that we wanted to keep that we got rid of. It may just be that we had to scale something back. We had to do fewer of a particular kind of event, fewer of a particular kind of competition, that sort of a thing. Or we had to get a little more sober about the resources we were putting into it. So let me give an example. The black powder community. It's absolutely an important constituency for us. But it's a small constituency, and it's probably smaller than it's maybe ever been. So as we look around and say, okay, what are we going to get involved in? We absolutely want those shooters to have a place at NRA, but relative to maybe something faster growing like America's Rifle Challenge or trap shooting, or how do we get involved in some of what we are doing jointly in the CMP space. Those maybe, for the time being, in the short term, had to become priorities for us because, that's where our priorities had to lie. Okay,
that's an excellent explanation. Now, what's an example of something that you guys found and were just like, this has got to go? Like, how did this even come up? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what's some fat that you trimmed that really needed to get trimmed?
So, we had a lot of hardworking people, but the way that a lot of our people worked was stuck in a prior era, right? The way the work might have been getting done was a little more 1980s, 1990s style. So you take a look at the way we maybe staffed a particular function and said, okay, today that function requires 12 or 15 people. There's a way maybe to do that same work with 8 people.
Interesting.
And liberate, 4 or 5 of those people to go do something else, either internally or maybe somewhere else.
So by the time you got there onto the board, the court case was over. The reform 2.0, NRA 2.0 folks were, in full effect in taking over the board. So did you find I guess what I'm saying is all the malfeasance had kind of been washed away, and now it was more of a, hey, we just need to make things more efficient, or did you see some actual malfeasance?
So I want to be clear, the fraud, the stealing, any of that kind of stuff that the court in New York identified, that was done. What we were doing was 2 things. We were cementing in place better procedures, putting the right people in the right places, thinking through programmatically what had to change. That was one thing we were doing. And then I think you saw with the resignations of a lot of board members who sort of took themselves over to the foundation, you had some people left who knew they were no longer going to be able to exercise their will, see things running the way that they thought they should be run, and those folks exited themselves and decided that they were going to go do something else. And that gives us an opportunity to get more people that are reform-minded involved.
So what can you tell us about the situation with the foundation? And specifically, what can you tell people who are nervous about raising money into the foundation?
So the reform candidates, the 2.0 slate, found ourselves increasingly at odds with the foundation. The folks that we sort of chased out of the main NRA took themselves over there and decided to behave badly in our view. It ultimately came to a place where we had to litigate with those folks. We believe we're going to prevail. I would encourage anybody who's interested to take a look at the motion for partial summary judgment that we just filed. I think it tells a really good story about why we deserve to have control of the foundation back.
Sum that up. Give me 2 sentences on why they say you deserve to have it back.
So under the law, there's a notion called ultra vires, meaning that you've acted beyond your authorized powers. And a lot of what the board that's on the foundation did was act outside their authorized powers. Bill Bockenberg, who's our president, serves ex officio on their board. Doug Hamlin serves ex officio on their board. They held board meetings without those 2 guys present and took actions that damaged the NRA, which is the main beneficiary of the foundation, and you can't do that. That's basically what it boils down to.
Gotcha.
We've asked the court to correct that by putting us back in charge of our foundation. But critically, in the meantime, we've stood up another foundation.
Yep.
And all of the Friends events are now putting the money from those Friends events into that new foundation. We have control over it. We're now using those Friends dollars for exactly what they were designed to be used for. And we're cautiously optimistic that by the end of the year, we'll be back in control of the main foundation.
Okay, so there was just to give some clarity to folks who are listening. So there's a foundation. There are for example, the Friends of the NRA dinners. We're raising money into this foundation. and that money was not political money. It was used to support shooting groups and programs, Boy Scouts, stuff like that.
C3 money. So it was
C3
for
money,
programs
charity,
we could
true
use
charity.
teaching, education, anything really non-political.
So there's a chunk of money, about $160 million, that was sitting over there.
Correct.
All of the, in my words, bad actors, a lot of the bad actors that were on the board for NRA went over to the foundation, took over that board, and then cut NRA out, and are now not spending that $160 million on what they've said that money is to be spent on, these various education programs that we talk about.
Right. So what those folks that are now running, we hope temporarily, the foundation believe is that they can stand up a competing organization, I mean that's what it feels like they're doing, and use those dollars for some other purpose. Our view is those dollars were raised in our name. It's not the National, Gunga
Right.
Galunga Foundation.
Right.
It's the National Rifle Association Foundation, NRA Foundation.
Right.
Our logo sits at the top of their letterhead. And those dollars were raised for NRA purposes to support our programs. It's a very common model in the nonprofit world. And you can't raise those dollars in our name and then say, well, now we're going to use them for
Now we're
another
going to use
purpose.
something else. So for the foreseeable future, you guys opened up a different 501c3. All new money is going into this different 501c3,
Correct.
and that money will fulfill the promise of, hey, this is going to go to these various educational programs. But you're still going to fight over the $160 million to make sure that gets spent in the way it was supposed to get spent. And it sounds like you even want control of that entity back. Why not just stick with the one you opened up and just cut them out completely?
Well, you bet we want control of that $160 million back. I mean, if they think they can just waltz off
So
with
it's
those
just
dollars.
it's not the organization, it's the $160 million.
Yeah, and whether we now bring that 160 over to the newer foundation or whether
I got you.
that's a legal question to be decided. But we're not going to let them waltz off with those dollars that were raised in NRA's name.
What do you think the plan? I can't figure out what the end game is. All the folks that went from NRA board over to foundation, what's the end game? What can they possibly accomplish?
You hate to speculate, but boy, it just seems like at some level they're seeking to be personally vindicated for the fact that they were chased out of NRA. They think they have a vision that marries up with what NRA should be, but it's a vision that was soundly rejected by our membership, soundly rejected by courts, soundly rejected by the NRA 2.0 directors. I think they're wrong-headed in their thinking, and I think it's time for a lot of those people to accept defeat, accept the fact that their view is not the view of the board, the courts, and NRA members, and maybe to take themselves off into a retirement place and let us get back to the business of supporting gun owners in the way they want to be supported.
Such a weird story, but I really truly do have a lot of faith in what you guys are doing. I think you guys are doing a great job. I look forward to even more good news and more development in coming years. I really am excited about it. Second Amendment is something I have dedicated my professional life to. It's what I do full time for a living. So the reason I am so excited about it is that it looks like you're getting back to doing exactly what I think I and most people who are fans of the NRA wanted NRA to be doing. And it's not to benefit us other than to protect our Second Amendment rights. So I really, truly am excited about what you guys are doing and saying and the vision you have for the future.
I would say this to any NRA member that's sitting out there, to any former member, to any prospective member. NRA is back. At this show, you can feel the energy. It's palpable. At the members meeting, you felt it. The members felt like we were doing a good job. There was very little controversy there. We have good financial controls in place. We broke faith with our members. We are back. We believe we have earned your trust. If you're a former member, now is the time to take a fresh look at coming back. If you're an existing member, now is the time to redouble your support. We have midterms coming up. We have lots of new gun owners that came to us through COVID. Those folks need training, they need support. We have lots of non-traditional constituencies that have showed up from all kinds of communities that were not traditional gun owners. They need our help, they need our support, and we need your support. We need your money, we need your passion, we need your membership, so that we can show Congress that NRA is the formidable force, that we are the 800-pound gorilla they know us to be, and that we should be feared in some cases, but certainly the partner of choice to be worked with on Second Amendment issues.
Phenomenal. Okay, last thing. So happy about the $11 million positive, but I have this fundraising idea. I think you're probably the right guy to talk to. I'm a big fan of Doug Hamlin. I think he's done a fantastic job.
Doug's a great guy.
NRA t-shirts that say "I dig Doug"?
I dig Doug.
How many millions are you going to raise off of "I dig Doug" shirts?
I will raise the issue with somebody who I know inside the building who can make it happen.
Phenomenal. Jonathan, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, man.
This was terrific. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you.
You bet. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Take care. A lot of you took our off-grid communications class in El Cajon, and the feedback we got is that you wanted more than just the gear. You wanted to know how to use the gear when it matters. So here's what we did. We built the next step: tactical communication and signal intelligence. That's the evolution of the course that you took. On May 30th in El Cajon at Cargo, which is a fantastic shop if you haven't already been there. So because most people rely on information that's either late or filtered, if that's you, you're already behind. We'll show you how to use off-grid radios and real-world signals that understand what's happening in real time, so you're not guessing or waiting on someone else. The bottom line is this is about having an information advantage. So spots are limited. You want to take this class, Tactical Communications and Signal Intelligence, on May 30th in El Cajon at Cargo. Go to gunownersradio.com so that you can secure your slot right now. So, Gary, I don't know if you've read much on this story, but there was a book that came out about Justice Alito from Supreme Court, Justice Alito. And it was written by, her name's Molly Hemingway. She's an author, generally conservative author, political commentator. She's actually the editor-in-chief of The Federalist, an online publication, The Federalist. And she wrote this book called Alito, The Justice Who Reshaped the Supreme Court and Restored the Constitution. Pretty fascinating. And the reason we bring it up is she went into detail on the abortion case that came out.
Dobbs,
exactly right. Came out a few years ago. Why are we talking about an abortion case? Well, we're actually talking about the Supreme Court. A lot of us are wondering, well, hey, how come the Supreme Court isn't just taking all these Second Amendment cases and I don't think people really truly realize how powerful one Supreme Court justice can be, how much power just one Supreme Court justice can have. It's not like Congress where it's like, well, if you got the majority, you can kind of do whatever. One Supreme Court justice can really throw a monkey wrench in the works. If they're anti-gun, they can really, really, really stop cases from making it to the court. And this article really proves how corrupt they can be in a way that I never would have imagined with the Supreme Court. Did you read this at all? Have you seen this?
I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with at least synopsises of her book. And
okay.
I'm familiar with the problems that went behind the scenes in the Dobbs decision.
So let me just good. I'm glad. We're going to talk about it. This floored me. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little naive, Gary.
I say that all the time, Michael.
Yeah. But it never ceases to amaze me. I couldn't believe what I read. So let me just read a piece. This is from the National Review. They did an article on the book and did a little bit of a synopsis. So let me just read just a little bit. So this was the Dobbs case. If everybody remembers, the Dobbs decision was leaked. It went out into the public before it was actually published and before you even got a dissenting position. The majority position was leaked, which is highly unusual. It was leaked. So this was during that whole situation. Justice Alito asked the dissenters to finish their work quickly. The request was, under the circumstances, entirely reasonable. The response was not. Far from speeding up the writing process, Justice Kagan reportedly visited Justice Breyer's office to ensure that the more collegial and gentlemanly liberal justice wouldn't accommodate the majority's request. According to Hemingway's account, she made her position known forcefully, shouting loudly enough, sources said, that the walls shook. So here you have a liberal justice going into another justice's office
and basically screaming at them. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The dissenters would complete their drafts by June 1st in exchange for an extension on the deadlines for majority opinions and other pending cases. But even the concession was undermined almost immediately. Okay, so Dobbs would have to wait. Okay, then they talked about Bruen, which this doesn't really have to do with abortion, doesn't really have to do with gun rights. It has to do with the procedure. Now Dobbs, the abortion decision, would have to wait for Bruen, and the delay stretched on. I don't know if you remember, but Bruen came out, and then Dobbs came out the next day, which honestly, everybody in the gun world was a little thankful for.
It took all the heat off of Bruen.
Right. It kind of took all the heat off of Bruen. On June 8th, a man armed with a gun, zip ties, and a plan arrived at Justin Kavanaugh's home. He later told investigators he had intended to kill Kavanaugh and 3 of his colleagues. Okay, here's the implication. The implication is that they had this abortion decision, and the conservative justices, for lack of a better term, said, "Hey, we're going to do what we think is, constitutional, which is turn this back to the states because it's not addressed in the Constitution." The liberal justices said, "Hey, wait a minute, we want to protect abortion, so we're obviously going to dissent." And then there was maybe 1 or 2 that were kind of on the fence, but looked like they were going to go with the majority, not because they had an opinion on abortion, but because they had an opinion on the legality of Roe versus Wade. So in other words, Roe versus Wade set up a procedure. Forget what it's about. Forget it's about abortion. I don't care where you stand on abortion, pro or against. Put your feelings aside on abortion so that you aren't your thinking isn't clouded because we're talking about the procedure. So Roe versus Wade, they basically, in a lot of people's opinion, went far and above what the federal government should be doing procedurally in order to protect abortion. So the conservative judges said, "Hey, abortion or not, this procedure shouldn't exist. This protection by the federal government shouldn't exist. Therefore, we're going to right the ship, turn it back over to the states like the Constitution should read." It looks like the liberal justices, one of the liberal justices, released the majority decision before it was published in order to pressure at least 1 or maybe 2 of the conservative justices who are maybe on the fence in order to get them to switch. So the idea was, hey, we're going to put public pressure or maybe even violent pressure on them in an effort to get them to change their opinion so that we can protect abortion. That's the implication. And oh, by the way, somebody actually showed up to kill Justice Kavanaugh. Now, I'm not saying that they set that up, but they certainly created the environment.
They lit the match.
So first off, is that your understanding of what, from what you've read?
Yeah, I think you've got it exactly correct, that there was an unprecedented leak of a highly emotional majority opinion. The issue is highly emotional. Abortion, people can't seem to have rational conversations about abortion. They're so fixed into their position of abortion should exist and should not be regulated, or abortion should not exist. It's murder. It's a really personal issue for many people. So they did exactly what you just said. They boosted that opinion out publicly to see if they could get a fence sitter to change their opinion. And I don't think they understood the consequence, although they might have, that this is so emotional that would have caused disturbance. It would have caused a public disturbance, and it did, because right after that, somebody goes to try to kill Kavanaugh and his family, and everybody else who was a conservative signing on to that opinion was on the hit list also.
Well, I think they absolutely understood the consequences. I've made the case before, and we're going to talk about it in another segment here. The political violence has found a home in the left. I'm not a Republican. I don't even know if I'm right wing. I certainly have views that fall within the right wing. But I'm certainly not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. But there's criticism for both sides. There's criticism for both parties. And a big piece of criticism I have for the Democratic Party and the left in general is that they have embraced and created a home for political violence. And I truly believe that they thought, hey, you know what? This issue, and it is an enormously emotional issue. It's a huge issue for Democrats, abortion. I think that they said, yep, let things happen. Let things happen. Let the violent threats happen. Let this level of pressure, people protesting and bullying the other justices, which is amazing to me when you see how they react to, like, for example, January 6th. Oh, Trump tried to...
Insurrection.
Yeah, it was an insurrection. They tried to take over the government.
Without guns, but it's an insurrection nonetheless.
Right. Well, what was this? What was this? Leaking and trying to pressure justices into changing their legal opinion, by the force of violence, by creating this environment?
Well, can we spin, you want to get more insidious, can we spin enough people up and get that fringe of people, because 99.9% of the people are not going to resort to physical violence, but 1/100th of 1% will. And when you're talking about a 350 million person country, that's not an insignificant amount of people. And so if Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Alito and Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch, I'm not considering Justice Roberts because he's more of a middle of the road fence sitter.
Right.
But if you take those people out, even just one of them, in 2022, who was nominating the Supreme Court justice to replace them?
Right.
Joe Biden, or whoever was running Joe Biden. That's who it would have come from. And so that's a goal. I guarantee you there's a portion of our citizenry that want the Supreme Court justices to be killed.
Well, yeah, but I totally agree. And I can't believe how unethical this is. How horribly offensive this is. Not because of the subject matter, again, put aside whatever belief you have on abortion, but the idea that a Supreme Court justice did this, leaked this in an attempt to pressure the other side is beyond insanity.
Well, you know what happened behind the scenes, right, with regard to the Dobbs investigation? Because Roberts ordered a Dobbs investigation. The investigation was conducted by the marshal of the Supreme Court, who is responsible primarily for the justice's security and the physical security of the building. I mean, they're not an investigative agency. So he conducted them to conduct the investigation. They interviewed 100 people. They wrote a report a year later, and it came to the conclusion, we can't figure it out. We talked to everybody. We looked at computer logs. Too many people had their hands in the pie. Could have been anybody. It seems like the back channel on this is the suspicion falls on one of the liberal justices' law clerks who had access to it and managed to spit it out, but nothing that they could get, as they said, beyond a preponderance. Preponderance, 50%. They couldn't prove that they did it, even 50%, which means they'd never get a criminal conviction for doing it, even if there was something wrong. I don't know if there's a statute that was violated. They didn't steal it. They just leaked it. And it's not confidential info. It might be confidential to the Supreme Court, but it's not secret information. It doesn't violate the Official Secrets Act.
Yeah, agreed it's completely unethical, but it may not even be illegal.
It may not have been illegal. And so that's why the FBI wasn't called in. The other thing is Justice Roberts didn't want the executive, the FBI, in his business, is my guess.
No question. And I think it was one of those like, well, I'll do something, but I don't want my court to be guilty of this, even though it wasn't him personally. I think that the stain that would put on the court was, overwhelming. But the point that I think the author was making here that I believe, and I want people to understand, is, they pointed out that Kagan was so passionate about this that they were taking action. I mean, there's no question that the dissent was delayed. That's not up for debate. The dissent was delayed. There's no question that Kagan, at least Kagan, went in and yelled at this other,
prayer.
Yeah, no question. So there are a lot of things to indicate that the clerk who leaked it, if it was a clerk who leaked it, they weren't independent. they didn't just decide to do this. It was probably directed. It looked like it was a tactic. It looked like it was a plan. It looked like it was something they did on purpose. And I got to tell you, I don't even know the word. I don't have a word strong enough for how offensive and horribly unethical that is.
But I think, you know, I don't mean be Pollyannish, but these are just 9 people. They're well educated, they're highly experienced, but they're 9 people who have their own flaws and their own beliefs and their own ideas on what the Constitution means to them and what they believe the direction of the United States would be. I just think people are naive if they don't believe that they are going to improperly influence their core beliefs and not move it in the direction of what they believe. It's not an impartial Supreme Court. It's 9 individuals that have wildly different interpretations of where this country should go.
I think that sums it up well. It's exactly right. So how does that apply to you, Gun Owners Radio listener? If you're wondering why we aren't seeing more movement, even though I got to tell you, I'm very thankful for Bruin. I'm very thankful for Heller and McDonald. It's all great. We are seeing some movement. But if you're wondering, hey, how come we haven't seen more movement when it comes to Second Amendment? You're still talking about, even though there's the majority, you're talking about justices that are willing to do something so completely unethical that, you know, it should be no wonder that they're not taking more Second Amendment cases. So if you're wondering how you can help, join San Diego County Gun Owners. Go to sdcgo.org, volunteer, get involved, make sure you get the right people elected. The reality is that the reason we have pro-Second Amendment justices on the court is because we got the right person elected into the White House. Wherever you stand on his other beliefs and decisions, the reality is the Trump appointees in the court, whether it's Ninth Circuit or Supreme Court, have done an outstanding job when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. So there you go.
So the lifeblood of every organization is membership. We absolutely need membership. And you as a Second Amendment activist want to be involved. You want to help make things better. And we have a way for you to be involved, get involved, and stay involved. Look at our volunteer page. If you go to sdcgo.org/volunteer, we keep it up to date, and there's always an opportunity for you to get more involved. Our bread and butter are our shooting socials, where we teach people how to shoot. They've never had a shooting experience. Maybe they're brand new to shooting and they want to have a first-time shooting experience. You can help us do that. Or if you want to help spread the word, we have tabletops at different gun shops, at different events, and you can volunteer to tell people more about the Second Amendment, more about how to get a CCW, or more about being a member of an organization like SDCGO. The good news is it's super easy. We'll help train you. We'll help you get involved. We'll give you the opportunity to do good things.
If you don't have the time to volunteer, there's another way that you can help too. We are always looking for folks to donate. And if you want to pledge $5,000 in this next year, we will have you on our show as a guest host. So come join us in the studio. We would love to have you here for one episode, and that is for a price of $5,000.
$5,000 donation to San Diego County Gun Owners gets you a guest host with me and Dakota and Alicia, and you get to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and you get to do whatever you want to right here on Gun Owners Radio. So thank you so much. Whatever you do, just do a little bit more than you did last year and help us defend and preserve the Second Amendment right here in your backyard. So a few years ago, there were a group of white supremacists, neo-Nazis, whatever the label is, that showed up in a small town in Virginia and had this really weird and frankly offensive demonstration or march that seemed to come out of the blue. It was very unusual the way things went down, and it was like something that the U.S. hasn't seen in decades. And I always thought it was interesting. Just to jog your memory, here's what it looked like.
A group of white nationalists held a torch-lit rally in downtown Charlottesville Saturday, 2 months after an Ohio man allegedly killed a woman when he drove his car into a crowd of counter-protesters. Alt-right activist Richard Spencer was reportedly at Saturday's march protesting the fate of a Robert E. Lee statue. A court recently blocked its removal after a recent legal challenge. Police say the rally lasted about 20 minutes, then the white nationalist group left.
So for weeks or months, there were pictures of people with tiki torches in Dockers and like these clean cut, white guys that were marching this small town, Charlottesville in Virginia. And it just was so out of place. It was so odd. And then it never really happened again. You never saw the tiki torches again. You never saw, a march like this necessarily again. In fact, it just seemed really, really strange. And I don't think enough people thought, well, wait a minute, what? Where did that even come from? Who are these people? How come they did this one march and then ended? Well, I think we have our answer. There's a huge, huge political story that I don't think people fully appreciate how big and how serious this story is. It turns out that the Trump administration, the DOJ, has indicted the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I know a lot of people don't really know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is or just how powerful they are. And so I want to talk about that a little bit and how that affects politics. I really, truly believe that this story is one of the biggest political stories in decades. I mean, it's huge. It's enormous. The Southern Poverty Law Center, or the SPLC, it's an American 501c3 not-for-profit. So they're actually a charity. In other words, the government has decided, hey, the work that they do is good for society, therefore they don't have to pay taxes. They're a legal advocacy organization specializing in civil rights and public interest litigation. So they're based in Montgomery, Alabama. They started back in somewhere early 70s. I think it was 71. In the late 60s, that's when the Civil Rights Act was passed, and there were a lot of civil rights demonstrations and that sort of thing. And the Southern Poverty Law Center was born of that. And I got to tell you, they actually did some really good work. They said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of people, there are a lot of blacks in the South. They're being abused, and, the KKK is real and actually exists. We're going to stand up to them. So they're known for legal cases against white supremacist groups and for classifications of hate groups and other extremist organizations, and for promoting anti-bias education. Okay, so in the 70s, they started filing lawsuits. And essentially what they ended up doing was bankrupting the KKK. So the KKK was a real, actual organization. It feels like it's way in the past, and every time you see them, it's black and white footage. But when I was a kid, when I was 5 years old, in 1981, I moved to Panama City, Florida. I remember going into a restaurant where there was a photo on the wall of a march, of a demonstration that had just happened a few years prior. There was a KKK parade. I mean, this was real. This was happened in my lifetime, in your parents' lifetime. This was a real thing. The KKK was an actual organization. They were organized. They were funded. And to their credit, the Southern Poverty Law Center got rid of them. I mean, they really bankrupted them, and they kind of got thrown to the wind. Now, what happened in the 80s is they essentially started looking for more problems. The Civil Rights Act, however you think of it, whatever you think of it, it really solved a lot of problems. A lot of the racism in the South, a lot of the prejudice in the South started to melt away. Things were getting a lot better. So in the 80s, the Southern Poverty Law Center started looking for things to do. In fact, in 1995, the Montgomery Advisor, they won a Pulitzer Prize for recognition for work that probed management for the Southern Poverty Law Center and for their questionable practices, their employee racial discrimination, and a lot of other things. So he won an actual Pulitzer Prize, basically saying that the Southern Poverty Law Center is irrelevant, and that they're discriminating themselves, and that some of their practices are unethical. Quote, its probe of questionable management practices and self-interest at the Southern Poverty Law Center, the nation's best endowed civil rights charity, according to the series, the SPLC had exaggerated the threat posed by the Klan and similar groups in order to raise money, discriminated against black employees, and used misleading fundraising practices. From 1984 to 1994, the Southern Poverty Law Center raised $62 million in contributions and spent about $21 million on programs, according to the newspaper. They have raised tens of millions of dollars. In fact, at this point, they actually have an endowment of hundreds of millions of dollars. They have an enormous war chest. They're extremely well funded. They're one of the best, if not the best, funded organizations in America when it comes to this kind of thing. And the fact that they've been abusing this or doing things that are unethical is not new. This was all the way back in the mid-'90s that this came out. Now, the next time I actually heard of them was Carl DeMaio. Carl DeMaio, who is an assembly member, he was on the radio, but now he's actually in the assembly. I looked for this clip, but it was some of the best radio I've ever heard. I would love to play it for you, but it no longer exists online. I went and looked for it. In 2016, Carl interviewed the Southern Poverty Law Center about the BLM, about Black Lives Matter. And it was a very sincere sounding interview where he said, okay, how do you end up on this hate list? You know, because the Southern Poverty Law Center became the official hate list. So if you're an organization who spreads hate, they're the ones that keep the list. And elected officials would use this list. Journalists would use this list. It really, truly became an official list. And he got a representative from the Southern Poverty Law Center to come on and say, okay, if you are, and they gave some criteria, if you are, if you have like these conspiracy theorists, if you think the government is against you, if you think the government is coming after you, if you're based on race, or for whatever reason, gave this criteria. Now I'm summarizing, but Southern Poverty Law Center representative told Carl DeMaio on the radio, this is the criteria. And Carl said, that's interesting. So what about BLM? What about Black Lives Matter? They hit every single criteria. Are they a hate group? Well, the representative was aghast, was appalled, couldn't believe that he would even suggest that a left-wing group, as they described, from the Southern Poverty Law Center representative, could possibly be a hate group, and then hung up on Carl. Hung up on him. It was some of the best radio I've ever seen. So that's where we are, and what they've found out is that the Southern Poverty Law Center, with their hundreds of millions of dollars, has actually been funding hate groups in order to do things like this march in Charlottesville, specifically that march in Charlottesville. So that's where we're at. That's the story. That's why they're being indicted. Basically, they're telling their donors, hey, we're fighting against racism. The donors donate, and then they take those donations and give them to racists to gin up racist activities. So that's where we're at. Gary, have you read this story at all? Have you seen any?
I have. I'm deeply conflicted about this one because I used to love the SPLC. Morris Dees, who started that in the 70s.
Yeah.
They did some really good work for, things I'm passionately involved in, which is the South provided almost no competent legal representation to predominantly black inmates that were facing the death penalty. I mean, there's famous stories out of Alabama where real estate lawyers were drafted to do a death penalty case. And the death verdict would be returned in a day.
Yeah.
In cases. In California, it's a week's process to make that happen. So they were funding lawyers and representing them themselves and doing really good work doing that. Then they bankrupted the Klan. I think it was in the 80s, where they actually took over the Klan building. It was a national organization, and Morris Dees got their building, and they had to give that to the SPLC. And then, like many of these organizations, the demand for racism exceeded the supply.
Yeah.
And so they had to generate more racism in order to continue taking in their contributions and to keep their members activated so that they would give money to them to combat the racism that they now seem to have been generating.
And this isn't a theory, this is, they're actually showing bank records. They're showing that, hey, the Southern Poverty Law Center set up a shell corporation, wired money into the shell corporation, and then that shell corporation wired money into, the account of some racist neo-Nazi leader. And then that racist neo-Nazi leader did something. So in other words, this march at Charlottesville that turned violent, there was money preceding that and then ending after that. So part of and what do I mean by that? Well, their defense, the Southern Poverty Law Center, has already come out and said, oh, no, we're paying informants. That's what we're doing. And we've done that, for the whole history of our
Because they're just like the FBI. They get to pay informants to infiltrate racist organizations, because they're doing a public service.
Right. And the federal government's going, wait a minute. If you're paying an informant, that would look like, okay, every month they get a chunk of money or, every year, something like that. There's some kind of consistent amount of money that happens over time. But what they're finding is, no, this was a chunk of money and then something bad happened and then there was no more money until they needed something bad to happen again. So in other words, this doesn't look like, paying an informant. They don't seem to have gathered any information. It looked like they gave a chunk of money to a bunch of racists, and these racists did something violent.
And that's how you try to invalidate any valid complaints. You say it's a conspiracy theory. Well, you know what? The grand jury disagreed. They listened to the evidence, and they issued an indictment. So your conspiracy theory is a full recitation of the evidence produced to a grand jury who then looked at it critically and said, you know what, there is something there. So it's not a conspiracy theory.
It's certainly not. And now, how serious is an indictment? What is an indictment? For people that don't know, it's not a conviction, but it's more than just a thought. Tell people how serious is it to be indicted?
Well, let's start with the premise that you don't ever want to be indicted.
Yeah.
That's goal number one, not to be indicted. An indictment moves you into court, and they're in federal court. And so while there are off-ramps in federal court, this organization is in deep, deep trouble. And now they're going to be digging into their books are going to be dug into, everything they've done. People are going to have to testify. And this is where things fall apart if they're actually doing these things, this is where things fall apart. People are going to be looking for off-ramps. People who are involved in doing this and knowingly doing it are going to be looking to protect themselves. And sooner or later, someone inside that organization is going to break loose and say, everything you said is right. And I'm not going to jail for it. And they will cut a deal with the United States attorneys and they'll provide information.
Well, the other thing is they climbed into bed with some, neo-Nazis or white supremacists. Why wouldn't those guys just say, yeah, here's what they wanted me to do for this money?
Sure, well, they can do that too. I think this organization is in deep, deep, deep trouble, legally and financially. I think their donors are going to dry up too.
Oh, and I think they earned the trouble. You know what I mean? I think that they absolutely deserve what they're getting. If you look at this hate group list where they decided, hey, here are the groups that are hate groups, it was like a who's who of right-wing politics.
Charlie Kirk,
Turning Point USA was on there.
Right.
There was another local group called the Ruth Institute. The Ruth Institute essentially was they promoted traditional marriage. So they said, hey, you know what? According to our religion, marriage is between a man and a woman. And one of the things that they would do is they'd go on a college campus and they'd talk to kids and they'd basically say, hey, you don't have to participate in this hookup culture. It's okay. You don't have to be pressured into having premarital sex or whatever. You can be yourself. That's essentially what this group did. They basically said, hey, you know what? If you don't want to go to a frat party and do something stupid, you don't have to do it. We'll give you a place where, your religious convictions, can be reflected. Well, they were considered a hate group.
Well, the SPLC became an enforcement arm of the Democratic National Committee.
100%.
And they would put predominantly, and I think it's 98 or 99%, were right-leaning or conservative groups were on the hate list. And so it was, what their hate was speech I hate, positions I hate, policy I hate. They weren't hateful people. They were conservatives. And that's what the SPLC hate watch list map became. And, there were signs. I mean, if you looked at the SPLC Christmas lottery, you could buy tiki torches and white hoods. I mean, they were they were giving away what they were doing. I'm only joking.
What do you think? If you had to lay money down, do you think that how's this going to go? How's this going to proceed?
I think I don't know if the punishment will be extreme. I think the exposure for the Trump administration anyway, and the DOJ, the goal is the exposure of the hypocrisy, the exposure of the malfeasance. And so I think that's all they care about is just keeping it going. We're going to run them through the court, and we're going to release everything that happens in court. And when somebody breaks loose, we'll make them available for interviews. And so we will keep the pressure on to show that this is nothing but a political hit job.
So you don't think this will end the organization?
I think the organization will end in its current form. I think it will lose most of its management. They will have to pledge to reform. The hate map will be a thing of the past, except for actually people that are hateful and committing violent crimes or violent ideology. But I'd love to see a hate map that was equally balanced. Hey, where are the people that are calling for jihad in the United States? Are they on your hate map? Or is it just conservatives who believe that gay marriage, according to their religion, is wrong?
Well, what's crazy to me, and what drives me a little crazy in general in politics, again, not a Republican, not a Democrat, not a Libertarian. Definitely have views in all three camps. But I'll give you an example. April 15th was Jackie Robinson Day. Did you know that?
I did not.
Jackie Robinson Day. Jackie Robinson was, in my opinion, the most significant sports figure ever.
Probably civil rights figure, too.
Because he was such an important civil rights figure. I think that his first at-bat was maybe the most important thing that ever happened in American sports. I think it changed everything, not just in sports, but culture. And, he turned into a huge advocate. Not a lot of people know this. He was a Republican. He actually campaigned for Nixon. That whole civil rights thing was the Republicans' one of their greatest victories. Their greatest victory, of course, was Abraham Lincoln and ending slavery. And it's crazy to me that the Southern Poverty Law Center has turned into such a Democrat, charade. It's turned into such a puppet of the Democratic Party. The Southern Poverty Law Center is basically took the baton from the Republican Party and ran with it, but by the time it hit 1980, had completely switched to being a self-serving, but also a Democrat Party serving organization. I would very much like to see the Republican Party get back to rallying around the civil rights victories that they had that have seemed to be forgotten. I would guess that if you surveyed, 500 people in their 20s today about civil rights and which party had, was the champion of those civil rights, they'd have no idea that it was the Republican Party. And here you have the Southern Poverty Law Center, who, again, took that victory from the Republican Party and is now using it to benefit the Democratic Party. I think it's insane. And I think that it's the fault of the unethical people at the Southern Poverty Law Center and the lazy people at the Republican Party.
I agree with all of that.
Pause. Jeez, I tried to make it. Okay, let's wrap it up. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So for that, all those reasons, I invite people to read about this. I invite people to, first off, completely, if you're funding the Southern Poverty Law Center because civil rights and racism is something that's important to you, stop doing that immediately. They're clearly a problem, not a solution. and get involved locally. I don't think people really truly believe or understand or know just how powerful the Southern Poverty Law Center was, what a huge effect they've had on politics over the last 30 years, and how this is going to be, I hope, a tipping point so that they either go away forever or change their tactics so that they're actually fair, accurate, honest, and return to the mission which they were designed to do. So there you go.
Hey, quick question. If you carry every day, when's the last time you actually wiped down your firearm? Yeah, exactly. Probably a long time. Problem is, sweat, lint, moisture, it builds up fast, and you should be taking care of it, but life gets in the way. That's why I like the Seal One gun rag. I just keep it right next to my EDC, and at the end of the day, you do a quick wipe with your Seal One gun rag. It only just takes a few seconds. I mean, it's super, super easy. Cleans, lubricates, protects, all in one step. Smells nice too, so you can dab it behind your ears and use it as aftershave. Go grab a Seal One gun rag at your local store and make it a part of your routine. Seal One gun rag, check them out.
All right, everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew. We found out years ago that my nephew Sam is extremely good at gun trivia. So if you send us a question and we read it on the radio, you're going to get a hat or a shirt. And if you actually stump my nephew with that question, you're going to get a special prize. Gary, are you familiar with this segment?
I am. I've been stumped many times.
Okay, cool. It is easily my favorite segment. So, all right, without further ado, Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good, man. Any thoughts on, thanks for joining us in Houston at the NRA annual. Any thoughts on NRA and Houston?
Yeah, it was really enjoyable to talk to all those people who are active in promoting Second Amendment rights across the country, some of whom I had already met at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Salt Lake City previously. But it's really interesting to immerse oneself in the different regional cultures and attitudes that everyone has, and these different perspectives from everyone else who's pulling this rope in the same direction, so to speak. It's also particularly exciting right now that the NRA is rebuilding its thing, and has really, I don't want to use the term bird because that implies Stalinism and things like that. But they've really purged their ranks of all the hardliners who were behind a lot of the corruption that led to the NRA's downfall in the first place. It's pretty much all reformers now, it seems like.
I'm glad you said that. I got to tell you, I'm so excited about the future of the NRA, but I'm saying it so much that I sound, I think it's starting to, I'm sounding like a fanboy. You know what I mean? And
I promise to sound,
yeah, it's starting to, I don't know. I'm wondering if people believe me. They're like, I have something to gain, but all I have to gain by this is help with the, restoring and protecting the Second Amendment. And I'm so happy you said that.
Well, for something I've been saying a lot in person, and I don't think I've said on the show before, is that I'm young enough that there hasn't really been a time in my adult life until very recently that I felt like I could actually trust the NRA to manage its funds, let alone do its job properly. So I hadn't been an NRA member until this year. The reforms they've done internally have finally restored the confidence that even when I was a kid, when I was a teenager reading American Rifleman or whatever and seeing in LaPierre's polemics, I know you always say that you used to do good work back in the day, but I remember thinking even as a kid, this guy really doesn't seem like he has the best interest at heart, or at least he's not doing his job the way he should, but he's gone. The supporters are gone. It's a new NRA and I'm excited.
Good. Well said. Okay. Today's question comes from Stan in San Marcos. The question is, you ready for the question?
Sure, let's have it.
What optical principle allows a red dot sight to remain parallax free or nearly so at practical shooting distances?
Stan from San Marcos, thank you very much for writing in. What optical principle allows a red dot sight reflex sight? People use those terms interchangeably.
To red dot sight to remain parallax free.
Parallax free at practical shooting distance. I can answer that partially. I'll just come out and say I can't name off the top of my head the actual word of the optical principle, but I can explain in some technical detail how those sights function, and that might satisfy what he's looking for. Do you want that?
Give her a try.
All right. What we're talking about here is this turn of phrase that I really like because it sounds cool. Virtual reticle at infinity. That's what a reflex sight is creating. A reflex sight works off of, it uses reflection, the name reflex sight. You have an emitter that is an LED. It projects a dot or a more complicated reticle, but let's just use a dot for this example. It's a round LED or it's shining to a round hole. It's projecting a dot onto a half mirrored curved lens. So that dot is reflected back into your eye, into the shooter's eye behind the gun. But because of the curvature of that glass objective lens, and this includes sealed red dots as well. It doesn't matter whether they have protective glass on the front or back. It's objective lens matters. The one that is partially reflected. The fact that that lens is curved means that the distance from your eye to the dot, from your eye's perspective, is nearly infinity. So it's kind of, it's like explaining a smell. It's difficult to explain without actually showing it to a person. But the point is that because it's a virtual reticle at infinity, it's like, from the perspective of your eyeball, the dot is being projected onto the target, but it's actually being reflected back into your eye. I'm not explaining this very well. But the net result is that if you move your face side to side, you will see the dot move very little, or if it was a theoretical perfect reflex sight, it would move not at all relative to the background and the target. Did that get close enough?
Here's what I'm going to do, because Gary, I'm never like, this is one of those questions. I'm not smart. I don't even know if you got the right answer or not. I'm not smart enough, Gary. So I'm just going to read the answer he gave. And then you two tell me if he got it right. So here was the answer that he gave. A collimated, collimated, collimated light source projects the reticle so the image appears at optical infinity, minimizing parallax shift with eye movement. Did he get it? I think
he might be speaking a foreign language.
You're an attorney, Gary. You're supposed to be able to translate this stuff for me. I think you got it right. I think
I'll tell you what.
I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
You move your head and it doesn't move.
Right.
And I don't have an excuse for not using it, because old Soviet reflex sights are referred to as collimator sights in technical documentation. So I've heard the term before. But I'll give myself a hat. I've got the technical description exactly correct, but I didn't use the correct term.
Half a hat.
All right. Fair enough. I give you half a hat, Stan and San Marcos. Collimated is the only
thing than half.
That's the only word in his answer that you didn't use. Everything else you nailed it. So there you go, man. Okay. I think awesome job, Sam. We'll give you a half or maybe 3/4. We'll give you 3/4 of a hat. So all right, man. You got anything coming up?
I have some blog posts coming up. I'm not sure the order I'm going to upload them in, but speaking of blog posts and speaking of collimator sight, I will say I did a series, I think last year, about, I forget what I called it. It was like Optics 101 or something like that. And it's a 3 or 4 part blog post explaining magnified scope and prism sights and reflex sights and holographic sights, kind of how they work and what they do for you from zero. Like if you're just walking into a gun store going, I want some black on my gun and I've never showered optics before, what do I buy? There are some blog posts up there on the SDCGO blog explaining that.
Awesome. Awesome job, Sam. Thanks a lot, man. See you next week.
Thanks for having me on. As always, see you next week.
All right, take care.
Okay, what's your name?
My name is Kush.
Kush.
Yes, sir.
We're here at the NRA annual in Houston.
We are.
And I wanted to ask, I'm asking everybody the hard-hitting question, what's on everyone's mind here at NRA. Everyone's talking about it this weekend. Could you give us your impressions of the Sabrina Carpenter and Madonna duet?
Wow, first of all, I don't remember any Madonna songs unless they're from the 90s or 80s. And Sabrina Carpenter, I'm only familiar with because of my daughters.
There you go.
I can't name a song.
All right, hard-hitting. Thanks, Kush. Have a good show.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your name?
Miguel.
Miguel, and you're here at NRA 2026 in Houston?
Yes, sir.
So we're asking everybody the hard-hitting question. Everyone's talking about it this weekend at NRA. It's on everybody's minds. What is your impression of the Sabrina Carpenter and Madonna duet?
Shit.
Excellent. Nice work. Have a good show.
Okay, so yet another assassination attempt, Gary. Did you read the news? Did you see it? Did you happen to catch the paper?
It's at least number 3.
It's at least number 3. It's the third one that we've actually heard about. And I wanted to talk about it. I think there's some points that need to be made. We're not going to analyze it. It's not a defensive gun use situation. And I don't think there's a legality issue. In other words, did they break the law? Some of these big cases, we analyze, what they did and what they should have done or whatever.
Well, he was definitely violating his CCW restrictions.
Yeah, if he had one. It's interesting this guy was from California.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that he appears to have attempted this with a pump-action shotgun. It was a Maverick 88, which is essentially a Mossberg 500 shotgun. He had a manifesto, which, as an attorney, if you write a manifesto, if you say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and he even apologized to people and said, hey, look, I'm sorry to, people I know or whatever, said, hey, I don't want to hurt, staff in the hotel and, that sort of thing, but this is something I have to do. If you have a manifesto, you're essentially, there's no insanity plea at that point. Like you know what you're doing. It was pre-planned and you were sane. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Well, you can still be crazy and write a manifesto. Look at the suicide bomb. Look at Ted Kaczynski. I mean, he was kooky and he had a manifesto. So, no, I don't necessarily think that means it's true. I do think that his manifesto is premeditation and deliberation. Yeah. And so there's going to be no problem with a criminal conviction with regard to this, although he's being prosecuted in D.C., so I'm not sure that the grand jury will even indict him, for trying to kill Trump in D.C.
Well, so one of the things, I think what I want to talk about is something that we talk about. Gun Owners Radio is a political show. We only focus on Second Amendment politics, but we're a political show. So you hear us talk about things that touch politics, including messaging, including the strategy when it comes to getting elected, the way the media covers politics, that sort of thing. We do have some gun reviews or gear reviews, that sort of thing. We do talk about competitions. But primarily, we're a political organization or a political show. And we talk a lot about rhetoric. We talk a lot about how the media phrases things. We talk a lot about how politicians phrase things. And we've talked a lot about, even on today's show, how the Democrats have a problem. They have a rhetoric problem right now. It is not a two-way street. In other words, it's not equal. The Republicans and the Democrats don't have equal fault when it comes to escalating rhetoric to the point of violence.
Violent rhetoric that spurs the most unstable of your supporters to take action on the basis of your rhetoric.
And I think that the Democrats right now are extremely guilty of that. And we've talked about it in the past, and this appears to be yet another example of it. Now, first thing I want to show you is a video of an example of the rhetoric that we're talking about.
Democrat Party elected officials saying, such as Rep. Hakeem Jeffries just this month said, "We are in an era of maximum warfare everywhere all the time." Governor Josh Shapiro said heads need to roll within the administration. Senator Alex Padilla said people are, quote, dying because of fear and terror caused by the Trump administration. Senator Elizabeth Warren, President Trump is making the country look like a, quote, fascist state. Senator Adam Schiff saying President Trump using a dictator playbook. Senator Ed Markey calling President Trump a dictator, saying that this administration's actions are authoritarianism on steroids. Governor J.B. Pritzker, never before in my life have I called for mass protest disruptions. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. You have Rep. Presley saying, we'll see you in the streets. Rep. Monica McIver, a Democrat representative on Capitol Hill, we will not take this shit from Donald Trump. He thinks he's a dictator. We are at war. These are Democrat elected officials calling for war against the President of the United States and his supporters. I could go on and on, but again, when you have people in positions of power that are saying things like this every single day for years, you are inspiring violence by people who are already mentally ill. And that's what we've seen against this president for far too long.
So that's an example of the rhetoric, and we've given examples of the rhetoric that aren't just coming from extremists. They aren't just coming from Democrats that live in their mom's basement and they have some obscure website.
That was the guy in Butler, Pennsylvania. He lived in his mom's basement.
Yeah, literally. He really literally did. But the rhetoric is actually coming from elected Democrats. You know, it's actually coming from Democratic leaders. It's actually coming from community leaders, and it's not subtle. It's real rhetoric that's actually spurring violence. Now, right around this point in the conversation, a Democrat always brings up, well, January 6th. Okay, January 6th, horrible. Bunch of jerks, shouldn't have done what they did. I think that there's a whole discussion to be had on January 6th, but the reality is that's all they can point to. Whereas Republicans can point to the fact that Justice Kavanaugh was almost murdered because of rhetoric from the left. The president was almost assassinated now for a third time at least because of rhetoric from the left. You know, the BLM riots after COVID.
Summer of Love.
The Summer of Love burned down, you know, La Mesa and Baltimore and city after city after city after city after city because of rhetoric. Am I the only one that thinks that? No, check out, display the, look at this. So she actually is an elected Democrat who posted, hey, she's in the House and she's urging the public to stop targeting President Trump's life after the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. Quote, please stop trying to murder the president. That's Representative Marie Glossenkamp Perez. She's a Democrat out of the state of Washington. Okay, so you have an elected Democrat in the House of Representatives who's pleading with her constituents to please stop trying to murder the president.
How did we get here?
How did we get here?
I mean,
what do you think? How did we get here?
Even Reagan was a one-off, you know, and Hinckley was crazy, you know, was showing his love for Jodie Foster by killing the president. This is different. This is showing your love for the people that are saying that Donald Trump is a fascist, Donald Trump is a Nazi, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, so that anything you do to prevent that is virtuous. And so the repeating of this propaganda over and over and over again, all people who live inside a leftist bubble here, is that he is stripping your ability to live in this country. He is a fascist. He will end democracy. You'll never be able to vote again. He is going to end the ability of the Supreme Court to rain check on him by putting people on the Supreme Court. So we need to take care of them too. And so that's how we got here. And it is now magnified through social media. So you can live in your own bubble. I mean, I don't mean to be critical, but we lived in our own bubble too when we could only watch ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and listen to some AM radio.
100%.
We were in a bubble. We were only getting the information that they chose to give to us. And so we didn't have a choice. Their editorial decisions was our information, unless you went to a lot of effort to find out some other information.
So do you think this is a growing pain of the age of information?
I think it's the beginning of the growing pain. What is going to happen now when AI manipulates both video and audio and photographic evidence to reinforce your belief that this person is evil? That they're actually going to have the person saying things that they didn't say that is an actual threat to you. And now you're going to respond to it.
I am absolutely making the case that the 3 assassination attempts wouldn't have happened. A lot of these things wouldn't have happened without the rhetoric from the Democrats. In other words, there are Democrats who said things, who spread messages that actually were a direct reason that these people tried to commit the violent acts that they committed. Do you think do you think that's too much, or do you agree?
No. What's the history of the attempted assassination of Reagan? Very limited. It actually tried to happen, but a very limited event. How about George Herbert Walker Bush? I mean, Saddam Hussein tried to kill him, but nobody else I know in this country. Right. How about Bill Clinton?
Right.
How about Obama? Who are the people that are lining up to kill those presidents? It's not happening. So why is it different? And if the answer is Donald Trump is different, he's not different. He's just louder, and you're making it worse.
Yeah, well, it used to be, when you'd have political discourse, the first person that compared someone to Hitler lost. And now it's like the default. They immediately, he's like Hitler. He's fascist. He's like Hitler. He's just like, he's a neo-Nazi just like Hitler. And what has everyone always wanted to do to Hitler? You know what I mean? I mean, it's really, truly a direct line.
Well, you see those signs at the Antifa demonstrations. Punch a Nazi. It needs an asterisk after that. And I define who's a Nazi.
Yeah, really.
So I'll punch anybody I dislike who I've identified as a Nazi, and now I'm virtuous for punching them.
Yeah, well, I really truly believe things have to end. Something has to change. I think step one is to call people out, but then disregard or marginalize anybody that does make this kind of rhetoric a part of their political discourse.
I agree. I'm not a fan of what the leftists did, canceling people. To conservatives and right-wing commentators who said things they disagree with. And I've noticed that, for example, on the Libs of TikTok, X account, they are going after people that are posting on their accounts that, next time we'll get them. And I've seen multiple of these where they're just reporting them to their employers. And these schools and these airlines. I saw it happen to a pilot, it happened to teachers, happened to doctors who are posting that we want Trump to be killed, and then they're going after employers. I've never been a fan of that, but I think that's the only way to control it, is to scare people so badly that the things that they are saying publicly will come back to bite them in the ass.
Well, I think an important distinction between cancel culture and this is that cancel culture was, hey, I disagree with this person, therefore they should be fired or whatever, canceled. Whereas this is, hey, it's not that I disagree with this person. It's that this person is actually yelling fire in a crowded theater.
They're inciting violence.
They're inciting violence. And had there not been 3 assassination attempts, I'd be wrong. They aren't inciting violence, but there have been 3 assassination attempts. This guy who came from California, loaded up, took a train, which, by the way, we're going to talk about in just a second, and went to Washington, D.C. This guy was like a rocket scientist, essentially.
An actual rocket scientist.
Yeah, he was. I really think that they're going to find that, no, this guy's not crazy. He's not insane. This was somebody who, absolutely had a grasp on reality.
He's just radicalized.
He's just got radicalized. And what did he get radicalized? The rhetoric that we're talking about here. Now, let's talk about how this relates to guns. So check out this interview, and I'm probably going to have you stop it on a few times while we discuss. But go ahead and play the interview, which is just absolutely ridiculous, the way they're talking about it. This is the way that they're trying to blame guns, okay? And it's very, it's just kind of elementary and silly.
So the alleged shooter, as we just said, had multiple weapons in his possession. Here in the District of Columbia, open carry.
Okay, so is this an open carry case? I mean, is that the problem, Gary? That like, oh, well, this guy was open carrying. He shouldn't have been doing that. I mean,
I don't know if there aren't many states in the United States that you're allowed to run a shotgun into a hotel that has a security perimeter.
Right. Through exactly.
It's the game plan of the left. The language is their game plan. Whether you're talking about gun violence or whether you're talking about high-capacity magazines or whether you're talking about assault weapons, now they want to denigrate open carry. So they tie open carry to this radicalized attempted assassination in order to just spray crap over all gun rights.
Well, and it just sounds like this guy was out strolling around, open carrying, minding his own business. Then, oh, hey, by the way, there's the president. I'm going to go assassinate him. This isn't an open carry issue. Go ahead and keep playing.
Is not permitted. You just said he traveled from California across the country by train. At this point, are you thinking at the federal level of changing security protocols in any way to, for example, match on trains what you are expected to go through when you fly, where you do have to declare a weapon when you cross state lines? How did he travel by train without any challenge and arrive here in the nation's capital?
Okay, you don't have to declare when you cross state lines. They keep bringing this up, and they brought it up in the Rittenhouse case, where he crossed state lines.
Well, and that was a lie to begin with.
That he crossed state lines?
He never crossed state lines with a gun. The gun was already in Wisconsin.
Right. He went to Wisconsin.
Right. He went to Wisconsin without a gun.
But the point is, it doesn't matter. Like, this, for some reason, this cross state lines thing has become like this, oh, geez, I didn't know he crossed state lines. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Either you're breaking the law or you're not breaking the law. It's not like, well, he broke the law, but he didn't cross state lines. So we're all good to go. Everything's fine. It doesn't, I don't understand. They're like making it sound more ominous.
But that is the goal. Everything to do with guns has to be made to sound violent or dangerous or unsafe in some way. Every argument has to relate back to, at the end of the day, we just can't make this safe, so we need to get rid of guns.
Exactly. Now, the other part of this is, let's say, now she pointed out, well, he went on a train. He didn't have to go through TSA, So, I mean, that's clearly part of the problem. Let's say this guy jumped on a, United Airlines or Southwest or whatever. Let's say he actually took all his guns that he took to Washington, D.C. on a plane, declared them, transported them safely,
Correct.
Legally. What difference would that have made?
No problem.
Not any difference at all.
As long as you tell the airline you're traveling with your guns, that's it. They don't care about where you're going. That's not their problem. That your guns may be illegal in that jurisdiction, that's your problem.
Right. Well, and it is. But the suggestion that somehow, TSA just doesn't want you using your guns to take over the plane.
Correct.
It's not like they're doing a background check on you.
As long as they're in the baggage in a case, they don't care.
They don't care. They're not putting you in a back room and shining a bright light on you and saying, why exactly are you going to Washington, D.C.? Is it to kill the president? I mean,
traveled with my
ridiculous.
guns plenty of times.
No one's ever taken over it. I think, since like the 1800s, no one's used a gun to take over a train, therefore there's no need for TSA. The suggestion that somehow mirroring the requirements to get on a plane with a firearm, on a train would somehow prevent this it's just another ludicrous thing.
But they're sound bites for low information people.
Exactly.
That's the point of what they know that they're only going to be talking about this for 2 minutes at most. And somebody's going to go and then research it? No, they're going to take their 2-minute soundbite. That's all they're going to absorb from the conversation.
I'm just offended that they're using these false sound bites and spreading them across state lines. I think that's the word. All right.
Well, I mean, if If you get in your car, you throw your guns in there and you drive.
Yeah.
I mean, you might come to a jurisdiction where the way you're transporting them is illegal, or the weapon is illegal in different states, but crossing the state line is not the issue.
Yeah, so far this reporter is missing the point like 3 different ways. So let's continue.
And look, this isn't about, in my mind, changing the law or making the laws more restrictive around possession of firearms. It appears he purchased these firearms the past couple years. We don't know how those firearms ended up in his possession in D.C. We can make some assumptions based upon what I just said about how he got to D.C. But I don't think the narrative here is about changing laws or making our laws more restrictive. This is about law enforcement who are doing their jobs and a suspect who tried to do something and failed miserably.
Yeah. Well, I'm not talking about changing the law in terms of possession of a firearm. I'm asking about crossing state lines with that firearm and arriving in the Capitol. If you try to fly, you do have to have your firearms declared in some way. You don't when you get on a train.
Well, look, you are talking about, I mean, if we're asking the question, that's talking about changing the laws, and I don't think that's something that we should be focused on right now in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, not a loophole.
There are lots of ways that. Yeah, so I mean, look, we also don't know. We don't have all the answers this morning. We're still looking into what happened, how he got the guns, if he got them legally. But what we do know is that he tried to use them. He did have 2 firearms and some knives on his person when he tried to use them, and he was stopped before he got anywhere near the president, before he got near any of us that were in the room at the time of that this occurred. And that's again, we can't overlook, and I'm not suggesting. You are, but we can't overlook the great work of the Secret Service last night.
No, absolutely. We're all thankful for that.
So, by the way, that guy, you know who that guy is? He's
Todd Blanche.
Exactly. He's the person that has replaced Pam Bondi. I don't know if it's been decided that he's
not full. Well, it hasn't been approved yet. It has to go through the Senate.
It hasn't go through. Yeah, and I'm not even sure he's the guy that they're gonna.
Right.
But anyway, right now, acting Attorney General, and again, crossing state lines. And loophole. She put that.
You have to get the word loophole in there.
You got to get the word loophole in there when you're talking about guns. It's just absolutely ridiculous the way that they're trying to, turn this into more gun control. The way that they're talking about it. And of course, it's just more evidence, more that we've seen. This is a person on Face the Nation, and she has no idea what she's talking about, but she's still allowed to ask these questions.
Well, Michael, you shouldn't be surprised. I mean, journalists. And I say that with air quotes, journalists, people on TV, every town, moms demand action. They danced on the graves of those kids in Sandy Hook in order to get their policy positions, which many of the policy positions just end with the Second Amendment needs reinterpreted to not be an individual right.
Right.
And that's the goal, that it is not an individual right. A state can ban guns.
Well, I didn't pull this clip on purpose because the clip was so, I didn't want to give this person any additional coverage, but I saw a commentator who they pulled up an interview by somebody that was in the room, a couple people that were in the room who were terrified. They were basically like, I was scared. I don't remember if it was like Erica Kirk who was leaving in tears, or somebody else that was attending the dinner who was like, this was I was terrified. Understandably terrified. And they basically said, look, remember this feeling the next time there's a school shooting, because that's how all our kids feel, when there's a school shooting. And I thought, first off, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Number one. Number two, all right, let's compare and contrast this to a school shooting. How many people died? Not one person died. Not one person died.
Not even the shooter.
Not even the shooter died. Now, why? Why? Because all these journalists, all these bureaucrats, and all these elected officials were protected by somebody with a gun, which this same commentator
inaccurately.
I saw that. I guess the first person to shoot
was a cop.
It was a cop. He or she, it might have been a she, did a mag dump and missed every time or something like that.
I was impressed. If you watch that slow motion video, I was really impressed that cop got their gun out, assessed the situation, got their gun out of their holster really quickly, and then proceeded to miss every single shot.
There's a lot of lessons to learn there, as far as all that goes. First off, you're right. I'm impressed too. It's my biggest fear. I've said it time and time again. My biggest fear is that I see something happening and don't don't trust my eyes. Like, is this something I should? But anyway, they did what they could. But we protect all these bureaucrats, elected officials, and journalists, by, men and women with guns. We refuse to protect children. This same commentator, if I said, hey, how about more guns in schools? They would be appalled. They would.
Well, they
oh
are
my
appalled. Their policy positions are anti-ethical to protecting children in school, and they know that. And so their priority is no guns. Therefore, the kids are sacrificed on our altar of no guns.
Well, and like you said, you were just saying how, like, hey, a lot of these anti-gunners, were basically standing on the graves of these children at Sandy Hook. This is how you know that they are so completely biased that they're not even thinking rationally. They're just anti-gun. This should be an example. This should be like, oh, all right, they were protected by trained people with firearms, and it worked. It absolutely worked. This person was armed, determined, went running through a checkpoint, got past law enforcement unscathed, but then was stopped by a good guy with a gun. Nobody was hurt. The president wasn't hurt. Bystanders weren't hurt.
It worked. Security was successful.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, this guy pulls a trigger and shoots somebody with a 12-gauge shotgun, they're going to get hurt. But it didn't happen because they were protected by a good guy with a gun. Why isn't that the narrative?
It should be the narrative. We have a lack of will to ensure and mandate federally and paid for federally. And I think people would pay for this as opposed to the fraud that exists in this country on a massive scale for federal programs. Pay for a mandatory school resource officer program that hires old cops and old vets and set a minimum number of kids per resource officer in a school paid for by the federal government. And you get to choose whether you want to sign up for the program. And then we'll shame the people that choose not to.
Yeah, one of the things that, we had that meeting with Sheriff Chad Bianco, the San Diego County gun owners hosted him. He came out and talked. And he said that would, if elected governor, every single school in California would have at least one resource officer.
But there's a difference. If you got a school of 200 students, you need one resource officer. You got a school of 2,000 students, you need 4 or 5. So what's the minimum staffing levels? But I think the federal government should pay for it so the states can't complain about it.
Agreed.
Then you force it on them.
Agreed. I even did the math on a show, and I remember it was like a fraction of a percent of the Department of Education's budget to be able to afford resource officers in schools. But the other part is, if you are a trained gun owner and you do have a carry permit and you're a teacher, you should be able to carry, man. It just this ridiculous kabuki theater, this virtue signaling where, we can't have more guns in schools, is right along the lines of, well, he took guns across state lines. These stupid bumper sticker sayings that they're using to make public policy with, it's not working. What is working? Well, the reality is working. The reality is, if you have a good guy with a gun, they will stop a bad guy with a gun.
If you had a requirement that there needed to be 2 guns on campus, in a safe, in the principal's office, in the gym teacher's safe, 2 guns on campus, and Sandy Hook wouldn't have happened.
I do, we keep talking about Sandy Hook. There was I don't remember if she was an assistant principal or a teacher, but I remember she unfortunately died. And I wish I could remember her name right now. But she actually reached out and grabbed the barrel of the gun to try to stop this guy. If you're brave enough to do that, and you're a teacher, then you're brave enough and smart enough to be able to be trained to defend yourself and your students. She could have pulled from concealment and gotten shots on target to stop that, and it would have been a lot more effective than reaching out and grabbing the barrel.
I'm a firm proponent of defensive schools. I can't understand why people won't sign up for that. They know guns exist. They know they can't stop somebody today. Anybody with a gun can walk onto virtually any campus in San Diego and can't be stopped unless there's a school resource officer there.
There you go. Okay, so if you agree with us that the rhetoric is too much, if you agree with us that we need to protect our students the way that we protect our bureaucrats, and that a good guy with a gun is the way to stop a bad guy with a gun. Go to San Diego County Gunowners.com, sdcgo.org. Sign up, become a member, help us fight the fight. Tell everybody you know about Gun Owners Radio. Help us get the message out. But I got to tell you, man, things have to change. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect things to get better. Any other thing you ever say about the assassination attempt or anything?
I've said enough.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.